Proseguimos, damos inicio ahora al primer bloque de nuestro congreso. El primer bloque lo inicia el capitán Charles Piersall, nuestro doctor honoris causa. Me permito leerles un breve resumen de lo que ha sido su vida profesional. Egresado de la Academia Marítima del Estado de Nueva York, Sony Academy, se desempeñó en las Fuerzas Marítimas de los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica, en donde obtuvo el rango de capitán. Posee una maestría en Administración de Negocios de la Universidad de Rochester y una segunda maestría en Ingeniería Mecánica de la Escuela de Extensión de la Marina de los Estados Unidos de América. El capitán Piersall es director general de Amadis Inc. Es presidente del Grupo de Asesoramiento Técnico de ANSI USA ISO TC8, Ships and Marine Technology, y fue designado embajador marítimo de la OMI, Organización Marítima Internacional, desde el año 2015. Se le reconoce en todo el mundo como líder en el campo de las normas internacionales de seguridad marítima y de la cadena de suministro. Fue presidente del Comité de la Organización de Normas Internacionales sobre Buques y Tecnología Marina, ISO TC8, durante 21 años. Bajo su dirección, ISO TC8 recibió el premio más alto que confiere esta entidad. En la actualidad, continúa siendo el enlace de ISO con la Organización Mundial de Aduanas y la Asociación Internacional de Puertos. Cabe mencionar que desde el 2017, nuestro expositor se convirtió en gerente del programa de la Organización Internacional de Normalización ISO. El capitán Piersall ha tenido varias asignaciones en las comisiones presidenciales de los Estados Unidos. Ha participado como expositor y moderador en más de 50 seminarios, conferencias y otros foros. Ha publicado y presentado numerosos artículos, tanto a nivel nacional como internacional, sobre temas técnicos y económicos, tales como la cadena de suministro y seguridad marítima, antipiratería, estandarización estratégica, planificación de transporte, adquisiciones, gestión de programas internacionales, análisis de costo-beneficio, guerra anfibia y sellado estratégico, transferencia de calor, planificación de la capacidad del agua, protección del medio ambiente marino, aerodeslizadores y entrenamientos. Fue autor colaborador en la estandarización de la seguridad de la cadena de suministro para el Manual de Seguridad Nacional de McGraw-Hill, segunda edición. En la actualidad, el capitán Piersall es director general de Amadis Inc., compañía dedicada a la ingeniería en control de gestión, y es presidente del Grupo de Asesoramiento Técnico de ANSI, además de su digno cargo como embajador de la ONU. El tema de nuestro expositor la mañana de hoy será estándares de seguridad en la cadena de suministros ISO 28000. Su relator será el ingeniero Gabriel Fuentes, estudiante de doctorado en negocio marítimo de la Escuela de Economía de Noruega. Tiene una maestría en ciencias en ingeniería de la cadena de suministro de Georgia Institute of Technology. Por favor, señor Piersall.
Buenos días.
Buenos días.
Saludos. This morning, I'm going to try to give you some insight into maritime security. But what is important is there is way too much information. Because I started this journey the day after the United States was hit in 9/11 by the terrorists. And at the time, Admiral Jim Loy was the commandant of the Coast Guard, and he went to the IMO and said, "We need help." It is not an American problem, it is everybody's problem. I happened to be in the audience at the IMO when the Admiral spoke, and I decided I might as well join the game. So I stuck up my card and said, ISO is ready to work on this. And afterward, the Admiral said to me, I didn't know you were working on this. And I said, neither did I until you spoke. So we started that journey together, and this morning, excuse me, what I'm going to do is briefly touch some points. You're going to have access to all of the slides, the view graph, okay? And so we are not going to take you through a student lecture of view graph by view graph, pane by pane, but merely to try to explain how the things piece together and the important things that we have done over the years together and where we are going today in the new venture in maritime security. There we go. The purpose in this slide is to show you how we fit into the picture. I must apologize because I do not speak Spanish, so I have no idea what that beautiful lengthy introduction was, but I kept hearing ISO every now and then, so I gathered that you got part of this. If you look at this, the diagram of the international relationships, you'll note coming down the middle from the regulations, the United Nations is the International Maritime Organization. They set the requirements. Coming down, what am I doing? 20? What are you trying to tell me? Oh yeah, okay. All right. So anyway, on this side, of course, from the World Trade Organization, you have ISO, and down here at the bottom, you have us, and we have established a relationship going all the way back to 1995, whereby we have served with the IMO to provide for a implementation of their requirements into international industry standards. This chain link merely shows how we are united together. On the left side, of course, is set in the requirements, and you'll see the IMO, but also in the situation dealing with maritime security, we had very close relations with the World Customs, as well as the International Labor Organization. To the right side, the people we really represent, suppliers, shipbuilders, transport people, freight forwarders, and our object in this link is to serve as the linking mechanism between those two bodies. We don't need to do that. Okay. Here you see that the fact with the maritime security is really it's the exchange of information. And the limitation on the information change is not dealing with the computers or the technology, but dealing with understanding each other's language of what we are trying to do together. This lengthy chain of events is, quote, the supply chain that we refer to in the cargo, starting from the source to the factory, packing on the rail, etc., down to the ultimate consumer. While we started doing these maritime security standards, it actually turned out that we wound up preparing the standards that were used for all of the supply chain. And so as we introduced the maritime security standards, in fact, they were adopted by the European Union Airspace and many others. All modes of transport. all cargo types, including the intermodal short sea shipping of the rail, the truck, excuse me, the sea cargo carriers, inland waterways, passengers. Basically, however you move the cargo, every link of that process. And if you recall, I'm not sure whether it was 80% or 90%. I guess it depends on whether you were selling or buying, but that represents the percentage of the cargo that goes by ship. So no matter who is moving it, you are in the middle of the transport of this information, the transport of these goods, the safety and the security of them, fighting off everyone who might try to terrorize or interrupt that movement of cargo. We started in the 9/11 period with a series of standards which we dubbed ISO 28000. It was a series of standards for the supply chain security, and the first step we took in that path was port security. I mentioned the linkage with the IMO. In 1995, I met first time with the Secretary General of IMO, and he said, I know how to put together all the requirements. But once we put together the requirements, we have no uniform method of implementation. We say these are the requirements, and now it is left to the individual member body, the individual state, for the implementation. He said, Charlie, you can help us if you stay out of my business and if you prepare the International Industrial Consensus Voluntary Standards for the uniform implementation of their requirements. And that challenge, that charge given to us in 1995 has stayed with us to this very moment, this very day. And the first place where we cut our spurs was the introduction of the ISPIS Code by IMO. And we knew that it was going to enter in force on a Monday morning. On Thursday, I had a draft in my hands for that uniform implementation of standards. I called the Secretary General in Geneva and said, my friend, we are in trouble. IMO is going to publish this Monday morning, and if we don't publish Monday morning, the energy is a waste. He said, don't worry. Now, if you want to talk about team spirit, you talk about a young captain trying to move this, and the Secretary General of ISO contacting his editorial staff saying, send nothing back to him, send it to me. And then on a Saturday morning, the Secretary General went into ISO headquarters, and on Monday morning, ISO 20858 was published at 8 a.m. So we were actually on the street 1 hour ahead of the initiation of the ISPIS Code. And of course, that took a lot of work, but it gave us a spirit. It gave us the spirit of we can do it and we will do it. So, what happens after the ISPIS Code? Now you're into the ISO 28000 family. The first part of this series was the best practices for the assessments, doing the vulnerability tests, the framework with the World Customs, and the, well, I did it, pardon me, gentlemen, ladies. Okay, things ain't working quite the way they're gonna work. Why am I going back and forth on the same slide? promised that I would not delay you, but I seem to be stuck giving you the same view graph over and over and over. We're on it? Okay, so first, the best practices. The next step along the way, we felt that ISO standards are voluntary. But if we were going to try to be helpful to the government agencies that were going to be needed to adopt this, to convince the industry that they needed to adopt this, we set out for an independent third-party certification. And so the entire series of the 28,000, we involved the classification societies through the international body for the certification and assessments to give us that third-party independent assessment. And that is what, in fact, launched the success of the 28,000. Because it started and it moved fast. I think the first gentleman to help us on this was the chief executive and chairman of the board for DP World. And suddenly we found that we had about 40% of the world's ports committed to this program within about 2 weeks after we published it. Of course, then it just started building from one group to the other group to the other group. And then DHL and FedEx said, hey, this sounds good to us. Now recognize I am the maritime guy. And the good news is the standards were acceptable to others. The bad news was that I was treading into other people's areas who were not necessarily happy that the maritime side of the world was writing the international standards for all modes of transport. But we did it. It was successful. We got most of the freight forwarders, and we launched that program. So you see the other parts of this is the audit and certification standard, which was used by the class societies. You see a guide for how to implement this thing. So we try to take people step by step as a tutorial of what to do to proceed. And then down one item here, the ISO 28005, and that is alive and well and still proceeding because that was electronic port clearance. And that means developing a uniform method of transmitting the necessary information from a ship to the port where they are going. The challenge is, when a master of a ship gets underway, if he's going to New York, he goes into his handbook and he finds out that he's got 25,000 forms to get into the US. But now he wants to continue on in his journey and he's going to go to Asia. So he takes all those pages and throws them away and now creates all the documents to enter Singapore, or the documents to Japan, or the documents to the European Union. And to be very honest about it, it is a mess. And so we undertook together with the IMO, with their facilitation committee, to develop a single set known as the single window concept of one set of documents necessary to allow for the security of a ship going from anywhere to anywhere, identifying its cargo, identifying what was on board, identifying the licenses, where are the people from, how to look for stowaways. Just imagine any possible thing that could disrupt your cargo movement or disrupt your ship's movement. And we moved to a method of electronic transmission of that information. And the single window concept goes on today, still, because that's a never-ending process. And we are working, as we have from day one, as part of all the working groups in IMO, and trying to move this again. And I'll tell you in a moment how it's gotten even further complicated. You know, this thing doesn't like me. Yeah, I know. All right. I think I've pretty well discussed this with you already, and adopting the various formats. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, I don't want to try to take you through this thing step by step. You're going to be able to have access to this material. You're going to have an email address. You're going to have the ability to get me on the phone, and we can try to answer any questions or help you as we go. Okay. Along comes the subject of pirates. And there's been many ideas and many approaches. Don't worry about the pirate, just put a fire hose on him, and etc. So this was an achievement that we are very proud of. When I first took over this ISO process, you were taking 4 to 7 years to get a standard. They massaged it, they studied it, they had more meetings, and they kept going and going. From 1995 forward, we delivered everything in 1 year. And there was pain and anguish, and there was accusations that we were not following the procedures. But we did it. This particular standard is dealing with the anti-piracy that came about for these private security armed guards was requested of us at an IMO meeting, a Maritime Safety Committee meeting. And we said, we'll do it. And 5 months later, we walked in and presented them the published standard. And it was a wonderful day in my life. The next step that has come up in the IMO is the subject of floating armories. My personal opinion, they'll never happen. It's just like my feeling about autonomous ships. Okay? Technically feasible. What country is going to welcome a floating armory sitting off of their coast? It may be helpful to these armed security guards, but I think you can see the political pressures and pushes and shoves that have gone on. It started with Egypt complaining, India complaining. It's all over the place, and it's still going on. And I really and truly cannot tell you whether it's going to happen or not, but I believe in my heart that it will never happen, because no sovereign nation is going to allow somebody else to park weapons and ammunition off their coast. Okay, I am about at the end point. We've undertaken several things in cyber, but you will notice we say cyber safety. There's a reason. If I say cyber security, I've involved every IT, I've involved every government organization, and I have involved everybody who could possibly stop me from doing anything. So it's cyber safety. And our approach really is for the safe operation of ships, to provide information to help commercial ships be able to guard against the attack of cyber. And we're going to work our way through. This is in process right now. We have the first step done, and my expectation is within this year we will complete that activity, and then we'll be ready to move forward. Actually, this is just merely pointing out that we're trying to do risk assessments, and we're also in the middle of a software nightmare. trying to look at all the necessary software that goes with the whole cyber world. And so that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes what I want to talk to you about this morning, and offer you again the opportunity that all of the information that's here, if you appreciate, and I beg forgiveness because I've tried to walk you through a process that I started in 2001, and it's just not ending, okay? So thank you very much for your attention, and I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.